Welcome to the Oyster Aero PearlCast, where we sit down with founders and leaders shaping the aviation industry, from freshly formed startups to the biggest names in the sky. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Turbo Resources in Phoenix, Arizona, now operating in 450,000 square feet of state-of-the-art warehouse space. Turbo continues to keep the aviation industry flying and is actively buying material. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode.
All right. Hello, everyone. Jeff Yergi with the Oyster Aero PearlCast, and honored today to have John Cuomo, CEO of VSE. How are you doing today, John?
Great. Voice is a little shaky, but doing okay. Thanks.
All right. So I guess we always start these with you and your career. When did you get the aviation bug? How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start my career thinking I'd spend kind of decades in aviation like I have. I actually began as a lawyer working on commercial transactions. But early on, I had the opportunity to work with a small aviation business. And what struck me instantly was how there's a mission around it. Being in a law firm, when you work for a client, you kind of finish a project and you move on. And what I noticed about this client was, there's this global mission critical aviation kind of ecosystem. And once you see how everything from supply chain logistics to repair to, keeping, airplanes safe and in the air, it's hard not to get hooked.
Wow. Okay. Um, so when you dove in, I guess it's interesting. How did your law background help you, do you think? Like what's applied there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, just like 90 seconds on my background. So I worked for a small distribution business, helped sell it to BE Aerospace, which was a public company that was building out, they were the largest seating manufacturer at the time, and they were building out a distribution platform. So this was going to be the kind of the core anchor or foundation for that distribution platform. So a few things. I mean, number one is, the two businesses that I've been part of, BE Aerospace and became KLX when we did a spinoff, and now VSE. They're both public companies that have had a lot of M&A and acquisitions as part of their strategy. So there's been a lot of core experiences that I've had in my legal background that supported me. The other thing I would say is just issue spotting. I mean, what you learn as a lawyer, or at least hopefully as a good lawyer, is when you weed through everything that's out there, what really matters. And in aviation, where every part has a story, learning kind of those detailed issues and what really matters behind kind of a total solution, I would say is probably the biggest takeaway that I had.
Yeah, I've heard that a law education is phenomenal because if nothing else, it teaches you how to, think critically and I would imagine that that's helped quite well. So I met you and Ben at Boeing after the KLX acquisition.
Yeah.
So how did that growth story for briefly from BE to KLX and selling to Boeing? What did you focus on back then at KLX? Was it OEM expansion mainly? Like what was the growth story there?
Yeah, I mean, that was an 18-year story of taking a $35 million revenue business to 2 billion. And it was really about consolidating a market, a global market for consumables and expendables. Back then, there were really local suppliers for hardware and chemicals and the like. And when you looked at your large OEM partners, think of an RTX, at the time you had, Goodrich and UTC and such, and they were building out global platforms of where they needed to support their OEM production around the globe, and then also to support their aftermarket customers. We kind of followed them and started to build a global platform of 50 locations for us to be able to support them. That business was one that we sold to Boeing on one ERP system, kind of one organizational structure, and it was really designed, as Boeing was building out their global services, kind of what we believe was the largest, but more importantly, the best platform in that capability set in the market.
Got it. Okay. And then so you started IN VSE, and let's talk about VSE right before you got there? What was the organization structure? What was the product focus? What was the company that you felt that you were walking into, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was something different for me, and I was ready for something new and a different challenge. It was a three-segment business. It was a defense business that was predominantly non-aerospace, what they call the fleet segment, which is really automotive distribution, and then it was about $125 million aviation aftermarket business with kind of three assets that were not integrated. So it was a very fragmented kind of industrials type business. Kind of too small to be as fragmented as it was, candidly. And as anything else, you kind of go in eyes wide open, but 80% or less is what you thought it was, and the rest is you got to figure it out along the way.
Sure. So you obviously landed there, and what's some of the first couple of things that you did while you were evaluating? Was it people? Was it was it culture? Was like what did you start with?
Yeah, I started with the value proposition.
Yeah,
Who are we going to be? Who are we today to our end user customers and to our suppliers? And then who are we going to be tomorrow? At the end of the day, when you live in these services business, you've got the OEM who makes something, the end user who uses something, and when you live in between, you really have to determine how are you adding quality value in that supply chain. So for each of those three business segments, I kind of determined who are we today, who should we be tomorrow, and it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. How many of them actually are sticking in the bullseye? What I saw
sure.
very quickly was the OEM centric model that I was building around aviation, which was quite different than what existed in the market. When I got there, which is you take our large OEMs and it's, let's say 150 or $200 billion aftermarket, how can you partner with them first and the end user second? So you're looking at your large OEM and saying, how do I help you monetize that aftermarket, protect your intellectual property, support these 20,000 end users in a unique way? That really was sticking. But then in my defense business, where I didn't have a lot of capabilities, I would say the value proposition didn't stick as well. And in my automotive business, it was working out okay, but it was just so disconnected from what I was doing in the other two segments that, I had to really sit back and pause and say, can I run this business this diversified, or do I need to make a change? So that's when it went from value proposition to your other comments, which is culture, people, and we had to make some tough decisions on divesting non-core assets, kind of reevaluating the culture in the business, and really looking at the org structure and then who fit in those seats. So it was a true kind of a 4 year, I would say, transformation process, that I had to endeavor. And you had COVID in the middle of it, which was, the ultimate fun.
Yeah, I think you started a trend. I read an Aviation Week article yesterday that said the diversification used to be the play, and now when you look at, like the GEs of the world, the Honeywells of the world, like focus and shifting to deep portfolio is sort of the trend there. So that's that's pretty cool. So, all right, you get there, you've divested some companies, and now it's time to grow. I mean, I don't remember the exact numbers, but you went from 400 million, and now you've gone into the billion. So, how's that? What's been the growth strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, from a Navy, again, we divested of a ton of non-core things, but
Sure.
we essentially took an $150 million aviation business, and you'll look at 2020, let's look at 2025, kind of round numbers at 1.1 billion, and we took market cap from a public company from about 350 million to about a little over 6 billion. So it's been an unbelievable and exciting journey. It really, at the end of the day, starts with one customer at a time, one product at a time, and one kind of OEM, program at a time. And that's really how we focus the business. So back to that comment you made about, being narrow and focused, at the end of this year, as we look at 2026, we'll probably have wow, probably 45 or so MRO facilities. And, each of them, with a few exceptions where we're doing a few things at, the same things at each site, each of them will represent a very distinct kind of center of excellence and center of excellence focus. And really, that's how we built a business. It's off of, kind of a center of excellence focus and a customer by customer strategy. Obviously, there's been a lot of organic wins in there, and then a number of acquisitions that we've combined businesses and created kind of a greater VSE family over time.
Sure. Yeah. The Kellstrom acquisition was interesting, and then most recently, Precision Aviation Group. So, what's the latest on that?
Yeah, I mean, the acquisition hopefully will close, in the second quarter. Really, this is kind of, as we look at kind of what's happened after the platform kind of optimization and moving to a full aviation focused business in 2025. When you look at what really can scale the business, you have to, discipline is like a key term I use all the time. Although we're growing at a very fast pace, we're doing so in a very disciplined approach. And when you look at kind of what is that transformational acquisition where 1+1 is going to equal far greater than 2, this is the deal for us. I mean, it's greater than 50% revenue growth. It's accretive from a margin perspective. The cultural alignment is tremendous. It puts us in a position where we'll have one of the broadest and deepest MRO networks in terms of capability sets in the market. We've got a really expansive and diverse group of customers from every commercial airline and MRO to the long tail of business and general aviation and rotorcraft customers, about 50% engine and 50% non-engine from a capability set. So really exciting to kind of look at this capability set of what we're building, and it'll create a really new VSE as we kind of exit 2026.
Well, excellent. And then the engine market certainly is growing too, as well for VSE, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a natural, I'd say of all of the markets, it's naturally growing at the highest growth rate. But for us, we've been expanding organically and inorganically, to accelerate that growth. So, our engine business, over the last 3 years has grown probably in the neighborhood of 20%, and we do expect it to continue to be a double-digit growth driver for us in the near term as well.
Got it. All right. So I guess capping off on VSE, what does the next couple of years look like as far as strategy that you can share? And then also maybe if you could highlight some things in the industry that are shifting that we should be watching from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with industry stuff and macro stuff first, and then kind of drill down into VSE. I think as you look at kind of the macro factors, there's still a lot going on. You've got aging fleet, you have global air traffic growth continuing to expand, you have supply chain complexity, not ending because it's the same market, and now you've got increased space, increased defense work, some of the other types of markets that are attacking the same supply chain. You have a continued focus on kind of outsourcing of maintenance and logistics. But all in all, I think when you look at the aviation aftermarket, it's a very structural, attractive market. Aircraft fleets around the world are aging, with travel demand continuing to grow, airlines increasing rely on specialized partners like VSE, but there's obviously it's great for the entire market to maintain and support those aging assets. And aging assets are retiring at a lower rate than historical levels. And I think what you're going to see is just a growing market in totality, but you're going to see the aging aircraft, people wanting to extend the life of those aircraft, while next generation aircraft are going to start coming due for maintenance, and us figuring out ways to support those aircraft. So if you look out kind of 3 to 5 years, you're still going to see strong, at the conservative end, kind of mid-single digits, but at a more aggressive end, kind of high single-digit macro aftermarket trends, which obviously is extremely attractive market to be in, considering that the markets have kind of grown consistently since COVID. So, what that means is it's determining exactly, back to that kind of micro level, where are the specific buckets that that capacity is needed, and how do we go fill that capacity, whether it's with labor, whether it's repair capabilities, whether it's with supply chain and products. So I think that for us at VSE, where we are kind of proactively investing is, where do we see the physical capacity in terms of repair capabilities that I've got to go build out? And more of that's on the engine side than not. Where is that technical talent that we have to either go help educate or continue to groom internally to be able to support that demand? And then, how do we continue to connect with our end user customers and our OEM partners that what's in my mind and where I think the market's going is exactly where they need me to play, so that I could be that nimble and agile player to move on a dime to support them. I think at a micro level, as you look at VSE, I think it's really actually going to start with culture and then kind of probably end with execution. For us, as we bring these businesses together kind of under one VSE umbrella, the expansive nature of the business as we move into 2026, we'll have, north of 2,600 employees, about 60 locations globally. It really comes down to a real big kind of cultural discussion. And I was telling my head of HR the other day, I think it's time for a strategic pause where we sit back and look at, where we are with the cultural evolution of VSE, how we continue to make culture intentional in this global organization. What's the common language we're going to have? What are the common values? How are we going to speak around those common values? I'll give you an example. Like, we have a value that we call speak up, which is really about, at the end of the day, how do you get people at all levels of the organization to feel comfortable and confident sharing with you what they see? Because at the end of the day, the answer is far more on the shop floor than it is in any kind of C-suite or conference room. So how do I take those 60 locations globally and get those teams to feel comfortable around it? So yes, it's the common language, but it's also around, recognizing and speaking that language, rewarding people around that language. So I think for us at VSE, it's, first, it's bringing all these businesses together under that common culture. Second, it's making sure that everybody at every level of the organization feels valued and feel like they can speak up. And then third, it's how do you convert that strong culture into execution that's second to none around the industry, where our turn times are better than anybody else, our on-time delivery is better than anybody else, that we understand products on a part-by-part basis, and our every part has a story, is stronger than everybody else. And then and at the end of the day, you're converting when a customer or supplier calls you with a quote unquote problem. You're just not just thinking about a generic solution, but you can dive into that detailed solution oriented focus. That's really what's going to, I think, drive the next phase of growth and excellence for VSE in connecting with that macro problem statement that's out there in the industry.
Sure. I mean, that's a tall order to get that all under control, but given your background and your team's background, you've already done it. So I'm sure you'll continue to lead the way for us. And it's been fun to watch you all grow tremendously over the last several years. I'm sure Ben is keeping busy, with all the acquisitions and integrations and everything. So that's gotta be fun. So.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement. It's he's got, we managed to micro P&Ls, so he's got all the P&Ls under him, and how he leads. So again, having some organizational design sessions and making sure we're keeping the business nimble and agile. And as you grow, that what made you special as a small business and how quick you can respond, that DNA and that energy doesn't leave. That's the stuff that, keeps me up at night. And that's the stuff that you got to keep the focus on, because that's what makes things special.
Yeah, that's the magic, being able to be service oriented as you continue to grow. So, well, John, really appreciate you coming on. Honored to have you, and it'll be fun to continue to watch you. And I'm assuming we'll see you down in Orlando, maybe at MRO next month. So,
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
all right, take care.
Thanks.